Hey Poke fans, welcome to TD's Pokemon Lair. I am TD and this is the Lair. Today we'll be unboxing a box of 10 Pokemon cards I sent to Professional Sports Authenticator over a year ago, and they sent me to them in this little box, nicely packaged so that they are safe and sound as they arrive. Let me get them out of the box and we'll see what grades I got. Let's go. Let's look at a card from the 1999 Pokemon Fossil set, an Arbok, a first edition card, the number 31. As we look at this card, you can see that the front surface looks really good. I don't see any damage, dirt, or creases. Looking at our centering from top to bottom and left to right, I think it's within tolerance. Looking at our corners and our edges, I don't see any damage at all. As I take a look at the back of the card, you can see that the surface looks really clean. I don't see any problems with the graphics. Our centering from top to bottom, I think, look really good, but from left to right, it looks a little to the left, maybe taking us out of tolerance. And finally, looking at our corners and our edges, they really look really clean. The only thing I can see is when I look pretty close to the lower two corners, there's some slight bending or damage right on the edge of the corner. And that's going to give us a grade of Mitt 9. That's pretty good for that Arbok. What we have here is a 1999 Pokemon Fossil set Cloyster, a first edition, the number 32 card. Looking at the Cloyster here, you can see that the front surface is nice and clean. I don't see any damage, dirt, bends. Looking at our centering from left to right, I think it's within tolerance, and from top to bottom, looks a little towards the bottom, but I think it's within tolerance. And finally, looking at our corners and our edges, they look pretty clean, except on the upper edge, there's some very, very slight damage right on the edge. As we turn the card over to the back, you can see that the graphics and surface of the card look really clean. There's no problems there. Looking at our centering from top to bottom, again, I think it's slightly towards the bottom, but I think it's within tolerance. And from left to right, I think it's nicely centered and within tolerance. Finally, looking at our corners and our edges, both top corners and the lower left corner have some edge damage, and so there's a little damage towards the right side of the lower edge. And with all that, we're going to get a grade of near mint 7. Not too bad. This card is a 1999 Pokemon Fossil set Gastly, a first edition, the number 33 card. Looking at the front surface of this card, it's very clean. I don't see any damage, dirt, bends, or anything like that. Looking at our centering from top to bottom, looks really good, and from side to side, I think it's within tolerance. Looking at our our edges and our corners, they're very clean. I don't see any damage. As I turn the card over and look at the back, it's looking just as good as the front. Our top to bottom centering, I think, is within tolerance, and left to right looks a little to the left, but I think it's possibly within tolerance. And our corners and our edges look really clean. I don't see any damage, and our surface, as you can see, is really clean. There's no problems there. And we're going to get a grade of Gem Mint 10 for Gastly. I like it. Wow. You're looking at a 1999 Pokemon Fossil set Golbat, a first edition, the number 34 card. Looking at the front of this card, you can see the Golbat's really clean. I don't see any issues with the graphics or surface. Looking at our centering from top to bottom, I think it's slightly towards the top, maybe out of tolerance, and there's a little bit of centering problems going towards the right, possibly taking us out of spec. Looking at our corners and our edges, they're very clean. And the back of the card looks really good on the surface. I don't see any damage, bends, or anything like that. Looking at our corners and our edges, they're really clean, just like the front. Looking at our centering from top to bottom, I think it's a little better than the front. And then from our side to side, you can see it's a little to the left, and I don't know if that'll affect our grade. And we got a grade of Mint 9. Somewhere on the back or front, we had a centering problem. This card is a 1999 Pokemon Fossil set Golduck, a first edition, the number 35 card. Looking at this card, you can see that the centering looks pretty good from top to bottom and left to right. And looking at our edges and our corners, they're really clear, crisp and clean. And finally, looking at our surface of the card, I don't see any problems there. I think it's really clean. As we take a look at the back of the card, you can see that the surface is clean as the front. This card's been well taken care of. Looking at our Centering from top to bottom and right to left, I think it's within tolerance on all four sides. And finally, looking at our corners and our edges, they're pretty clean. I think there's no damage there. And this should be a pretty good grade of Gem Mint 10. Awesome. We're looking at a 1999 Pokemon Fossil Set Golem, a first edition number 36 card. Looking at the front of this card, you can see it's nice and clean. I don't see any bends, damage, dirt, or anything like that. Looking at our centering from top to bottom, it looks slightly towards the top, possibly taking us out of tolerance. Our side to side, I think, was within tolerance. And our corners and our edges, I think, are very clean. As we look at the back of the card, you can see that the surface and graphics are just as clean as the front of the card. There's no damage, dirt, or anything like that. Looking at our centering from top to bottom and left to right, the left to right, I think, is slightly to the left, but probably within tolerance, maybe not. And it's slightly towards the top, which I think might affect our grade. And finally, looking at our corners and our edges, they're pretty clean. I don't see much damage or any damage there, but we do have a small white speck on the upper blue border about halfway to from the center towards the left. And that's going to give us a grade of Mint 9 for this Golem. That's pretty darn good. Let's check out this 1999 Pokemon Fossil Set Graveler, a first edition, the number 37 card. Look at the front of this card. It's very clean. There's no dirt, damage, grime, bends, or anything like that. Our centering from top to bottom looks slightly towards the top, maybe taking us out of spec, and looking from side to side, I think that is within spec. And our corners and our edges are very clean. Looking to the back of the card, you can see that the graphics and surface are just as clean as the front. There's no problems there. Our centering looks pretty good from side to side and top to bottom. And looking at our corners and our edges are very clean. The lower left corner has like a slight bend right on the corner edge, but it doesn't affect the look of the card. And that's going to give us a grade of Mint 9. That should have been a 10 because I don't think the centering was off, and that little bit on the back shouldn't have made a difference. Wow. We got to look at this 1999 Pokemon Fossil Set Kingler, a first edition, the number 38 card. Look at the front of this card. I don't see any dirt, damage, grime, or bends on the surface of the card. Looking at our centering from top to bottom, I think it's slightly towards the top, but might be within spec. Looking at it from side to side, I think those are within tolerance. And our corners and our edges, I think, look really clean and nice. Looking at the back of the card, I can see that the surface is really clean. I don't see any bends or problems like in there. Looking at our centering, it looks a little bit towards the top, from top to bottom, and from left to right, I think it's pretty close to tolerance. Looking at our corners and our edges, all four corners have very slight damage. There's a little bit more on the two lower, and there's some edge damage down the right side. And that's going to give us a grade of near Mint 8. That's better than I thought I'd get. Let us take a look at a 1999 Pokemon Fossil Set Magmar, a first edition, the number 39 card. Looking at this card, you can see that there's no problems on the surface. I don't have any bends, dings, grime, dirt, or anything like that. Looking at our centering from left to right, it looks really good, and from top to bottom, I think it's within tolerance. And our corners on our edges are very crisp and clean. Taking a look at the back of the card, you can see that the surface is just as nice as the front. I don't see any damage, dirt, or anything like that. No white specks. Looking at our centering from top to bottom, I think it's slightly towards the top, but possibly within spec. And from left to right, I think it's slightly towards the left, but again, possibly within spec. And finally, our corners and edges are actually nice and clean. And that's going to give us a grade of Gem Mint 10. That surprised me. I thought it'd be a 9. This is a 1999 Pokemon Fossil Set Omastar first edition, the number 48 card. Looking at this card, you can see that the front of it is really clean. I don't see any dirt, damage, bends, creases, or tears. Our centering from top to bottom looks pretty good. Our side to side, I think, is within spec. Looking at our edges and our corners, I don't see any damage that I can tell. And as we look at the back of the card, you can see that it's very clean. I don't see any dirt or damage to the surface or the graphics. Our centering looks really good from side to side and top to bottom. Looking at our edges, they're really clean, but once we get to our corners, the upper right and lower left corners both have some slight dent. And that'll give us a grade of 9. Man, these 20-year-old cards giving me a 9. Woohoo! Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed the old cards that I put out for you to look at. And please subscribe and like. And don't forget, always don't forget, you got to catch them all. Have a great afternoon.